Having a life scholarship and being able to afford to go to college made me feel inspired to go.
When I got a life scholarship, it was such a relief.
I knew that I wanted to have an impact. Having a life scholarship through the SC Education Lottery was huge. It gave me the opportunity to make that impact right here at home.
The South Carolina Education Lottery. A better you, a better us, a better South Carolina. Visit sceducationlottery.com/betteryou.
Ready to make a real impact every day? Join the Active Day Home Care team and help clients maintain their independence in the comfort of their own homes. Make a difference in someone's life as you provide essential daily assistance and protect their health and happiness. Earn up to $20 an hour and enjoy additional perks like optional daily pay, 401k, paid time off, ongoing educational training, and more. Join a team that values care, compassion, and your professional growth. Visit activeday.com to apply.
Unspoken Issues. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Unspoken Issues podcast, Gimmick Cover Summer. This is the second poll that we put out, so we are going to talk about the results of the second poll. The concept here was to gather some gimmick covers and let our listeners choose what they thought the best were of the polls we were putting together. Have I got that right? Is there anything else? Because you're the one that came up with this one.
We've been doing this for several years now. I think when we've done some issues that have gimmick covers, and we've talked about them, Dark Hawk 25 is one we did. I think that was part of the Superblog team up. Everybody was doing Chromium, maybe was the thing. I thought it's kind of like a summer thing where we do one episode per month. Can focus on some of the big gimmick covers of the 90s. That's what it's known for, one of the things anyway. We put up a couple of polls. We still got one more we got to run for the third episode, but that was kind of the gist. We did several options on the polls. I purposely did that. With the one I ran, I think I put 4 options up there just so we have other gimmick covers. We can at least talk about the covers of the other ones, and then we'll just talk about the content. There were just so many. It got really crazy in the early to mid 90s with all the Chromium, hologram covers, die cut, all kinds of crazy stuff by the time the bubble burst on the industry.
Yeah. So this was my poll that I got to throw out there. And I was struggling trying to figure out, okay, what do I put up against what? You know, do I want to make a theme of what I'm putting out there? Or am I just going to grab 4 gimmicks and toss them out there? I think our first poll made good use of that. But our second one, I decided we're going to just stick with a single publisher, and that was Image Comics. I also stuck with one gimmick, and that was foil covers. I went to Grand Comics database and Mike's Amazing World of Comics to remember what was on stands in the 90s. And it was pretty easy with Mike's Amazing World. You can narrow it down by publisher and look at the cover gallery. So there's a whole internet out there, and you can ask questions about some of the gimmicks from Image Comics. But foil covers was a big thing. I found the earliest ones that I could find that I wanted to throw out there. To run down our poll options, we had ShadowHawk number 1, just to do my best to kind of describe the way that it looked. It was a black cover. You saw the ShadowHawk helmet, which was foil embossed, if I remember correctly. Yeah. ShadowHawk's red eyes. Aside from the red, the silver, and the black, that's it. It says ShadowHawk. That's all in foil embossed. The Image logos in foil embossed, and you got the red eyes on there. And man, you talk about a cover that stood out. Was this one that you remember seeing on the shelves?
Oh yeah, this was. I mean, the Image launch was kind of early in the whole gimmick cover fad, and We reference Rob Liefeld's podcast a lot, and he's quick to point out a lot of their big sales numbers were not the result of gimmick covers. Youngblood, Spawn didn't have really any gimmick covers, at least early on. Savage Dragon. Valentino utilized it for ShadowHawk. Maybe that's because he wasn't as big a name. And then, the one we're going to talk about tonight was a Jim Lee book that did use it. Image in the very early stages didn't use a lot. They would kind of jump on the trend late as time went on. There's also some cool stuff on that Their Observations podcast where he talks about the people would pitch the guys what kind of gimmicks they could produce. Like, hey, we've got this foil stuff that we can do. This cool emboss. We can do that. And I think one of the other ones in your poll, the Mirror Coat cover, was the Brigade cover that he talked about getting pitched by one of those salesmen. And there's a lot of interesting stuff from the 90s era that Liefeld talks about on his podcast of how crazy things were.
Right.
I was definitely impressed with the ShadowHawk cover. And then ShadowHawk 2, #1, that came out, it was the second miniseries, had a die cut, this pretty slick black matte cover that had a die cut in the parts of ShadowHawk's armor.
Mm-hmm.
And the backing of that was all silver. So it kind of shone through the die cut of the cover.
Yeah. I did not pick up ShadowHawk until probably the second series. However, a friend of mine back in the 90s, every once in a while you could find one of your buddies picking up a comic, whether they're definite collectors or not. My friend was getting ShadowHawk. He liked ShadowHawk. He liked the story that was being told. So he ended up reading that title and keeping me up to date on it. I wasn't buying it off the shelves. Sure enough, about 10, 15 years ago, he'd been gone from town for a long time. He came back home and gave me all his comics. It wasn't a large amount of comics, but this was one of those ones in that stack.
Yeah.
I can remember looking at this thing going, this thing looks pretty darn. It is fancy. It sticks out. A lot of times there's a lot to be said about covers that are kind of minimalistic. And this is, when it comes to the amount of colors that you're getting, it's definitely minimalistic, but it's not like it's a small ShadowHawk helmet here. This thing takes up most of the page. It's huge. It is something that is in stark contrast to some of the other very busy gimmick covers that we'll probably be talking about here. Very simple. Okay, hey, this is his helmet, and it looks like a freaking helmet. I did want to throw out, I mentioned that I would talk about, if anybody left some comments while they voted, I would discuss or at least bring up what they had said. Nick Norris says, I think Brigade was the best. It had some depth and color where ShadowHawk was straight silver. The foil on WildC.A.T.s was a little too busy for me. It didn't enhance, but cluttered it up. There's a preview of what we're about to discuss here in a couple minutes. He believes it had some depth and color where ShadowHawk was just straight silver. I still dug this cover. But our next selection was WildC.A.T.s #2. I believe that was the second selection on the list. Let me double check that, make sure I'm looking at it right. Yes, WildC.A.T.s Covert Action Teams #2. And this is our winner. It came away with 44% of the vote. ShadowHawk, a very respectable 36% of the vote. We had 52 votes in total. WildC.A.T.s is busy. That hollow foil or whatever it is mesmerizing.
This is one of the gimmick covers that stands out in my memory, possibly because it was one of the earlier ones. There's this pattern to the foil or whatever, the holofoil, that is mesmerizing, especially when you focus on the background where the foil is.
Mm-hmm. I saw a story not too long ago about how there was a bunch of this left over.
I was going to bring that up too.
Oh, good. I'm looking for it right now. I just remember somebody was going to reuse it, but go ahead.
This was maybe 10 years ago, maybe less. Valiant Comics. Somebody came across cases full of this cardstock or whatever that has this foil on it, I guess.
Wow.
Valiant Comics used that for a Quantum and Woody cover. Ha! If you look at it, you can see the pattern is the same. It has more cover art than this wall, which is just the team members floating there. But yeah, that was a really neat story that when that happened, several years ago. But it was apparently the same material used for this. They had a bunch left over and somebody took it off their hands.
That's fantastic. I couldn't remember who picked up the holofoil. I just knew some comic book company was going to reuse it. So that's awesome. I know we were talking about it before we went on air. The first issue of WildC.A.T.s that I ever got was issue number 4. I don't know if I had seen this. You would think there's no way I could have avoided seeing this on the shelf.
I found it in a comic shop because the newsstand edition did not have the foil. A lot of the gimmick covers did not make it to newsstands. They were only at comic shops. Some of them did, but a lot of them didn't.
I'm trying to think of when the comic book shop ended up. We finally got something in my town, and I'm pretty sure it was right around the Image era. The guy that was running the shop was dealing in Magic cards and baseball cards and probably Pokemon later on. There's a very good possibility that he didn't start selling comics until after this issue came out. Or I wasn't a customer at that time. We're talking late 92 when that issue dropped. So I wasn't driving yet. I was only 14. It probably flew under my radar and I may not have actually seen it. But yeah, I definitely picked up WildC.A.T.s number 4 off the shelves. That was a couple issues after this. We already talked about how we covered issue 3 in the past, which is continuing with the big cliffhanger at the end of this issue. Carlos Frito actually commented on the WildC.A.T.s cover and said, this cover is by far the best holofoil cover of the era. I think he identifies with what you did there. This is the cover you think of. Okay. And then my third pick is the one I voted for, and it got the least.
Same here.
It got the least votes, 20% of the vote. Brigade number 2. I dug this cover. To describe this cover, I'll let you do it. Let our listeners know. What do you see here on this cover?
Well, this is Brigade. To be more specific, it's volume 2, number 2.
Very good.
But yeah, the cover is the mirror coat cover, so it's kind of the same as a foil emboss, but it's got more of a reflection. Maybe that's what the difference is. And it's Seahawk, one of the Brigade characters. It's probably intended to be an homage to the classic McFarlane Wolverine Hulk, or actually Incredible Hulk cover with Wolverine, and you see the Hulk reflected in the claws. In this cover, it's a big shot of Seahawk with his silver mask. You see in the reflection, Cabot is attacking him, the Bloodstrike leader, who's part of the Blood Brothers crossover where Brigade and Bloodstrike are going back and forth and fighting it out. And I think there's some blood coming out of his mouth, maybe. Interestingly, the back cover also has part of that thing forming a border around the Deathmate Red ad on the back that had Bloodshot. I wrote a piece on the UnspokenDecade.com a few years ago about the Blood Brothers crossover, which this issue was a part of. You can hear a lot more of my thoughts on it there. A little plug for that. I love that cover. It's legitimately one of my favorite gimmick covers from the 90s.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, dude. The point of his helmet is to reflect something, and it evokes this like, holy crap, and the way that it is drawn like a reflection, it looks great. I mean, it makes you think his helmet is reflecting the guy that he is about to either get shot by or beat up. But yeah, man, this one I felt like really evoked what was happening on the cover, because WildC.A.T.s number 2, you got some weirdness going on. Void's, maybe you can make an argument that Void's causing the holofoil look to happen, that she's transporting somebody. Brigade volume 2 number 2's got my vote for sure. Like I said, that one got the least votes, 20% of the 52. But yes, our winner, WildC.A.T.s number 2, takes away the crown for this poll. All right. Well, our creative team of WildC.A.T.s number 2, just to give everybody an idea here before I jump into that, WildC.A.T.s number 2, cover dated October of 92, on sale October 30th. So, like I said, I've been 14 years old at this point in time. I did not have a car, and I don't even know if I had a comic book shop. If I did, I wasn't making it there all the time. Creative team for WildC.A.T.s number 2, written by Brandon Choi, also written and penciled by Jim Lee. Inked by Scott Williams, lettered by Michael Heisler, and colored by Joe Chiodo. Man, do I recognize all those names. That is a stellar lineup in my opinion. I'm going to share my screen because I don't know if you can see that, if it looks decent or not, but there is what is on the shelves at the very same time. WildC.A.T.s. So we have, this is just Image Comics, of course. We've got Brigade #2, not the one we just talked about. This is the first volume of Brigade, where it looks like they're fighting genocide. Cyber Force #1 just hits the shelves, and I don't know if this is I think this is the limited series.
Yeah, that's the first issue, Cyber Force issue.
And I think Savage Dragon is in the middle of their limited run too, because this is Savage Dragon #2, Super Patriot in the background there. ShadowHawk #2, featuring Spawn, it appears. And then we got that Spawn #5. I recognize that cover.
Even them all in the dust, already up to issue 5.
Yeah, he is. And then Youngblood #3, which I think I own. I must have picked it up in the back issues though, because I think I know what Youngblood #4 looks like. But anyway, so there you go. That is what was on the shelves in October of 1992. Look at November of 92. Nothing. Like nothing happened in November of 92.
They really pushed out in October.
Yes, they did. So that was what was on the newsstands. Let's just see if there's anything else going on in Marvel at this time, October of 92, that was gimmick related. You tell me if anything sticks out to you here. I really don't know if that Barbie fashion is a gimmick cover or not. It might be. I'm not seeing. There's Death's Head 2 #1. Oh, look at this.
Yeah, we got the Fantastic Four.
Yep.
That's going to be part of the next poll, isn't it?
I remember Evan talking about this one.
Yeah.
Ghost Rider,
Hulk
Captain America.
The Hulk 400, that's foil cover, at least.
Did you ever buy, or do you remember seeing the Marvel Masterworks at like
I've never got any of those.
Well, if you looked at the hardcover prices, they were insane. You're looking at these things. I remember seeing those. Boy, there's a lot of stories that we've covered in October of 91. All right, we should be reaching the end here. Oh, wait. Was this a gimmick cover?
Yeah, that Silver Surfer was definitely foil embossed.
Yeah.
I like that cover.
Let's just check DC and see if DC's...
But still, what was that, 3 or 4?
Month? Just in that month. October of 92. As we get into DC Comics... I really, DC, like gimmicks.
They did them, but not as frequently.
Yeah, and I'm afraid that as we go through this, there's a good possibility I may be missing one.
We're in the middle of the Death of Superman storyline here.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
Spectre #1 is a glow-in-the-dark cover.
Yes. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, those skulls. Sick. Very sick.
Hey,
all right.
Is one of my favorite gimmicks. A lot of comics did it. I think Ghost Rider did it the best, and then ShadowHawk also had a pretty cool glow-in-the-dark cover.
All right, so 1 for DC, it appears. So, okay, that was fun. But let's rock and roll. WildC.A.T.s covered action. Covered. They're covered. Or covert, one or the other. Covert Action Teams #2 kicks off with a catastrophic psionic anomaly in Washington, D.C., detected by Internal Operations, IO. Director Lynch scrambles to make sense of the event as an entire section of Georgetown is decimated. As IO investigates, they encounter Void and the WildC.A.T.s team, who had narrowly escaped the explosion through a disorienting teleportation jump. This jump may have triggered a shift in the timeline, correcting a future where the team would have died. Now regrouped and on the run, the team heads to a safe house near Quantico, while Lynch orders the Razor unit to hunt them down. Inside the safe house, the WildC.A.T.s uncover the broader threat. The Damonite-led Cabal is nearing completion of Project Reunification, a plan that could doom Earth. Zealot reveals the group's secret weapon, Voodoo, a young woman who can see and exercise Damonite possessions. When Voodoo identifies Vice President Dan Quayle as the mole aiding the Cabal, the stakes skyrocket. Meanwhile, in Norfolk, the Cabal's leader, Hellspawn, prepares to use the mysterious orb to open a dimensional gate to Damon, with aid from the Coda Warriors and the government mole, Belial. Before the team can act, they're attacked by Black Razor forces, and a brutal battle ensues. The Wildcats are nearly defeated. Voodoo is captured, but Marlowe regains the upper hand just as Lynch arrives to call off the assault. Lynch reveals he's been trying to expose reunification, but has been blocked by bureaucracy and the Mole. He proposes a reluctant alliance, trading intel on the Cabal and the Mole's identity. Tensions remain high, but Marlowe knows the team has little choice but to cooperate. The issue culminates in a full-scale assault on SDI Astronomics, where the orb is being held. The Wildcats burst in, shattering defenses, only to be caught in another ambush, this time by Youngblood, a rival super team with their own agenda. As everyone converges, the true mastermind watches from the shadows. With all his enemies distracted and the orb now unguarded, he declares that the time has come for his ultimate victory. The next act is about to begin. So there you go. That is the summary for Wildcats issue 2. I'm going to start. I've got my notes here. So it's cool to see John Lynch.
Oh, yeah.
It's very cool to see the beginnings of the Image universe. It's so cool just to see these people, just to see Jim Lee draw Youngblood. And I know I talked about in issue 3. I think we discussed that then at that point. It's great to see our favorite artists and this universe trying to get off the ground. Hey, our toys are going to play with your toys. Mm-hmm. And it's cool to see John Lynch in there. He's going to be a very prominent figure in the Wildstorm universe. So John Lynch, cool. Brandon Choi, Jim Lee, not shy on telling you the story. There are a lot of words.
Yeah, there's several pages that I turned the page like, whoa, look at all this dialogue. The Image guys got a lot of flack for being art over story, style over substance or whatever, but Wildcats has got a fairly, it's simple in a lot of ways, but there's a lot of stuff going on too. So. Yeah, I think we got to think here as well. We're in the second part of a 4-part story. Mm. The whole exposition about the Daemonites and Cherubim, we're probably at a time where that's not even been discussed. Right, yeah. Probably just a few vague references in the first. The first issue, I think, was more just like, here are the characters. We're going to throw some cool Jim Lee action in there for you. But issue 2 is when they're giving you the idea of what this book's really going to be about.
Yeah, because this war and these clans, the Cherubim and the Daemonites, they're not going away. So I don't think they named Dan Quayle here, but
I don't think they name him in any of the 4 issues. They refer to him as the vice president in I think in the 3rd issue when Youngblood's talking about him and stuff. Mm-hmm. But they do call him I think Pike calls him the VP, right? At one point in this one, when I was a kid, I didn't get that was Dan Quayle until maybe the 4th issue. Like it had been established well before I realized that, that's supposed to be Dan Quayle.
Right. It might have been an issue of Wizard for me. Like Wizard probably had to explain it to me. I had no idea because I remember probably reading that going, oh, really? Okay. I get it. Man, one of my favorite Wildstorm villains has got to be Hellspawn.
Yeah, he looks awesome.
Yeah. Like he definitely is not featured as much here. He will be later in some future issues, but he looks so freaking cool.
And I don't know if I mentioned it, because we've done a lot of Wildcats. We did the 1st and 3rd and now the 2nd issue. We also did the Spawn Wildcats.
That's right. Right.
And we did the Eric Larson Wildcats issue at one point too, I think.
Yeah, we did.
I mentioned this before, but like Hellspawn, I didn't realize until I read it somewhere in the last couple years that Hellspawn is a member of that race that Photon is from Youngblood.
Oh, really?
Fiery hair, or the
fire.
Right. And he's a Daemonite possessed one of those aliens, and that's what Hellspawn is.
Okay. All right.
Very cool, backstory. I don't know when that's revealed, but I read, and I don't even remember where I read that, probably on the Rob Liefeld Facebook group. But yeah, he looks awesome.
Yeah. I mean, he only gets a couple panels here where he's directing some things, but again, he's an awesome looking villain. I threw another reference to a 90s gimmick in this next comment. And I don't know if I'm going to put this in a poll because I have no idea what I would put it against, unless it's going to be a situation where we have to choose some of the weirdest or off the wall gimmicks. And I think we're already sort of doing that. Did you ever get a hold of some Valiant Vision goggles?
I've got that comic book, but I don't have
You don't have the glasses.
Yeah.
So the way that it worked, I mean, it's pretty easy to tell once you put them on. I have my pair laying around here somewhere. But really the only thing that happened when you put them on is that the red would pop off the page. Now, I have no idea. I'm sure it's probably a simple thing that they put together that just makes the red stick out. But the cool thing about that is when somebody did the Valiant Vision comic, you can pick it up and read it just like normal. You don't need the glasses to read it because everything looks fine. But the artist would know what they were doing, where they would put the red in some issues. If something's tinted a little red, it would pop and stick out. Text that was in red would pop and stick out. It looked really cool. Grifter's mask is one of the coolest things to see with Valiant Vision goggles. We'll call them goggles from here on out. The Valiant Vision glasses would make anything red pop, and I always remember taking them and let's look up some other comics and see what happens. Grifter's mask would always stick out, and we see Grifter here a few times, but every single time I'm just like, oh man, I wish I had my Valiant Vision on me. Pike really reminds me of Deadpool. The personalities definitely are not the same. Pike is more mercenary.
Just the red. I mean, the mask as well. He does have like the big shoulder pads, which are different. You know, his costume's not exactly the same, but it definitely evokes Deadpool.
Yeah, for sure. And another moment in this book is when it's Spartan versus this other Coda warrior. I cannot remember her name, and she rips his arm off.
Yeah.
And Jeremy, our big buddy Maul, freaks out. I don't know if we may know that Hadrian is a android at this point, but I can't recall. I obviously he just got his arm tore off, so they're going to have to make up a reason as to why he's still alive. But anyway, yeah, that's a moment there. Youngblood showing up. I already talked about it. What an awesome moment there. I talked about Gnome and how I just don't even remember this guy at all for some reason. And I did not read the Wetworks backup. Did you?
I did not, but I was going to mention this is the first Wetworks we get a look at, and it's going to have to tide you over for a while because it be an actual issue for a couple years. But yeah, I did note that there was the Wetworks preview,
which was kind of cool. All right. Well, there you go. That's all my notes for this issue. I mean, it's issue 2. Wow. I've never read a 4-issue series more out of order than what we've done here with this. 1, 3, 2, next will be 4. This issue kicks a lot of butt. The cover obviously is what drew us here. I think there's going to be more to look forward to with issue 3 with Youngblood versus WildC.A.T.s. I think everybody's ready for that. But anyway, I'm stepping back and you have the floor. What's your notes?
I really like this issue. I've gone, we've talked about a couple other WildC.A.T.s miniseries issues already, and I probably said the same thing there, that the original WildC.A.T.s 4-issue miniseries is one of the comic stories I've read the most in my life. In an age where trades were less common, now everything gets collected in a trade, but the Savage Dragon trade paperback that collected that miniseries, and then the WildC.A.T.s trade paperback that collected the original WildC.A.T.s miniseries. I was able to get those when they came out and just wore them out, just read them over and over. WildC.A.T.s is just like a big, crazy summer blockbuster type action comic book with really great art, a lot of action, some crazy plot, but I love it. As far as this issue in particular, you kind of touched on a lot of my notes. John Lynch appears in the first issue. We may not get him named until this one, but yeah, he is basically the Nick Fury of the Wildstorm universe. He's a big deal, especially with Gen 13 and Team 7 later on. There's a panel where there's a bunch of monitors in the background.
Is it at the beginning or at the end?
I think it's closer to the beginning. But it's after they realize it's Dan Quayle is the mole.
Oh, here we go. Over here on the left-hand side.
There you go. Yeah. And see, there's Batman. They're watching Batman on one monitor. See some Wolverine and Magneto in the middle there.
Oh, yeah.
What clearly is either Ren or Snippy at the bottom. I don't know. I guess Snippy's the big dumb cat, right? I don't like Ren and Snippy, so
It's been a long time since I watched it.
I thought that was a nice little background catch. When they're sparring, it's basically Zealot going to work on Warblade and Maul. It's cool because they're doing this sparring session, and we're hearing through the captions, Razor team is coordinating their assault about to attack, and Zealot picks up on it. I don't think she can actually hear what they're saying, but like she can sense that there's an attack that's about to happen, which kind of goes to show you how much of a badass she is.
Yeah.
And then to save the day against the Black Razors, Marlowe blows one of their knees out.
Yeah.
That character comes back later, another Wildcats issue as a villain. It's kind of hazy. I got the Absolute Wildcats a couple years ago, which collects like the first 13 issues, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhere in there, he comes back as a villain, wanting to get revenge on Marlowe for maiming him.
Nice. Call back.
Yeah, that's pretty much all I got. I think as far as notes, it is cool to see like Dan Quayle, he basically his arm turns into a tentacle.
Yeah.
When he attacks Pike for talking smack, it shows that the possessed Damonites are also a threat. Cool stuff.
Yeah, his face is starting to kind of melt.
He's losing control.
Right.
Transforming, basically, like the alien side is breaking through.
All right, then. We can get into picking a panel. And this is Jim Lee, buddy.
Yeah, there's a lot to pick from here, I think.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's just talk about what the contenders should be, and then you can tell me what yours are. We'll just start from the beginning here. We have our splash page, which I think is our cover. Like, I had it in this issue.
It's not exactly the same. It's the same concept. The imagery is a little different.
Okay.
Like, Maul is not on the cover, but he's on the splash page. The characters are positioned differently, but it's the same idea.
Okay. Well,
it almost feels like it's a first draft of what the cover would be.
Yeah. That looks, just Jim Lee at his peak. We have another large panel of the team. There's a 2-page splash coming up here. That's when they're battling the Black Razors. Maul is such I always thought, okay, stop. Who's your favorite Wildcat? Who is your favorite Wildcat? Did I ever ask you this?
I think we've talked about it before. It's probably Grifter. I think at the time I might have liked Warblade the most, but I kind of like them all, Grifter.
Yeah, I love the character of Maul and the fact that they were like, okay, we're going to make him the Hulk, but, he is able to control getting bigger, and the bigger he gets, the dumber he gets, which is neat. Now, I know we've talked about Maul a lot, especially I think he's a big part of, or he's at least a part of Spawn Wildcats. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always loved Maul, but I agree, man. Grifter's probably my favorite. He's always been pretty cool. And I don't know if you ever had a chance. I think Dean and Derry and I discussed
the one shot.
Yeah, the one shot, which was.
I listened to that a month or so ago, a little while ago.
Yeah. It's an all right story. I think that was kind of like the catalyst for the ongoing, because the ongoing started shortly after that, and it picked up some of the story. Almost every single one of these stands out. That panel is huge. I love the sense of the panel bleed over. Pike is getting kind of blown back, and his head is getting into one of the other panels. And Spartan always got some cool poses.
I love that. Barton posing there with all the energy coming out of his hands and kind of surrounding him. That's a really cool one. There's also a cool one a few pages back of Grifter, jumping over somebody, shooting his guns over his head. And
oh, yeah. Yeah, right there.
During the Black Razor fight.
Everybody gets their moment to shine here, sort of. And then, when a Youngblood shows up, you had to do 1-page splash of that. I know of 2 issues that Jim Lee is going to draw Youngblood. Yeah. But this is what made Image magical, in my opinion. These guys playing with each other's characters, which was really cool. And then that was it. So, all right, I'll let you pick, man. This is Wildcats number 2. What's your panel going to be?
I'm going to go with a smaller one. It's page 13. panel too. It's during the fight, the sparring session, and we see Zealot throwing a left hand and punching Warblade, and you see like his neck stretching out.
Ooh.
Which is part of his powers, is like his elasticity, I guess, and stuff. I think she calls it his flexing powers. But
Yeah, I don't remember ever referring to that as flexing, but all right then.
the only time it's like earlier on the top of the page, you see him stretching his arm out with the claws and stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
and apparently it applies to his neck as well.
Indeed.
I'll go with that one.
All right. Well, you just leave all the juicy pages for me to pick from. And how are you not going to choose Youngblood showing up? I mean, Youngblood being drawn by Jim Lee. We got Die Hard. We've got Bad Rock or Bedrock at this
Would
time.
have been Bedrock at this time, I think.
That's right. Bedrock, Shaft, Chapel, and Vogue. And then I cannot remember this guy's name. Help me out. Combat. There you go. All right. Well, there it is. That, my friends, was WildC.A.T.s number 2. Thanks to everybody that voted, and we will be putting out some more. This is Gimmick Cover Summer. This is something that is going to hopefully continue for a few more polls throughout the summer, so we hope to get some more votes as we move forward throughout these months. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into plugs there. Anything left unsaid?
No, I think we covered it.
All right, then. Chris Armstrong, you have the floor.
We Gimmick covered it. Oh,
Hey! Oh.
you can cut that out. I got another podcast I do with my buddy AJ where we talk about movies. 2 of them, actually. One called Small Screeners, where we talk about direct-to-video and made-for-TV movies. We also have one called Because Movies, where we cover other movie stuff that we're interested in that is a little less restrictive. Check those out on your podcatcher of choice.
All right. Well, as for myself, ladies and gentlemen, you can check out this Unspoken Issues podcast in affiliation with the Unspoken Decade. The Gimmick era. No, wait a second. How does it go?
The Gimmick era has never been covered so well. I believe.
Yeah. I mean, this is the podcast for that. That's for sure. We cover 90s comics here on the Unspoken Issues podcast. We're closing in on 150 episodes, folks. 150 is around the corner. We got some stuff on YouTube. If you get the opportunity, you can head there, but you need to find us under the Source Material Comics podcast, which is the feed that has this podcast along with the Source Material Comics podcast on there as well, where we discuss comics of any era. We also have our Snap Material podcast, which if you play Marvel Snap on your mobile device, then by golly, this might be a podcast you want to check out. It's me and Evan Bevins discussing Marvel Snap. We have a fun time dropping about 4 or 5 episodes each month. So you can go back and hear us talk about the previous season, the upcoming season, our unlocks, some cards we got, and just an all-around good time. Also, check out the top 5. And here lately, he and I have been doing some tier lists, which, you know, a visual component to our podcast. I just uploaded one to YouTube a few days ago. So if you're interested in Marvel Snap, you can hear us talk about where we rank some of those cards. With that being said, we are getting out of here. We'll be talking to you soon. That over there is Chris Armstrong. I'm Jesse Starcher. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us. Unspoken Issues is part of the UnspokenDecade.com, the home for 90s comics, blogs, and podcasts. Unspoken Issues also has a Facebook group you can join if you are interested. Just search the Unspoken Issues podcast and request to join. All of this would not be possible without W2Mnet.com, so make sure to seek them out for more podcasts. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please feel free to share, and we look forward to entertaining you again soon.
We're good against evil. Wildcats, Wildcats. Wildcats, Wildcats, Wildcats. We're good against evil. Wildcats, Wildcats, Wildcats. We've got invincible power. Wildcats, yeah, the one and only Wildcats.
Having a life scholarship and being able to afford to go to college made me feel inspired to go.
When I got a life scholarship, it was such a relief.
I knew that I wanted to have an impact. Having a life scholarship through the SC Education Lottery was huge. It gave me the opportunity to make that impact right here at home.
The South Carolina Education Lottery. A better you, a better us, a better South Carolina. Visit scheducationlottery.com/betteryou.